In today's video, I'm going to give you 9 key steps on what to know and what to do and what not to do when it comes to chronic fatigue syndrome and exercise and movement. This is basically going to be an education masterclass on exercise and movement in relation to chronic fatigue syndrome recovery. So if you're someone who is struggling right now and you're trying to exercise, or you're pushing yourself in the gym, or you're pushing your body beyond its limits and you keep getting post-exertional malaise, you keep feeling horrible, you keep having flare-ups, this video is going to change your entire recovery process and in return help you get healthy and enable you to do the things you love again over time, so you don't have to suffer from chronic fatigue syndrome anymore. So the first thing you need to understand when it comes to exercise and movement with chronic fatigue syndrome is you need to understand that you don't have to suffer with symptoms for the rest of your life. You don't have to have post-exertional malaise for the rest of your life. You don't have to keep pushing and getting nowhere. There's a new approach, and an approach that we've been doing and rolling out with our clients over the last 16 years with thousands of people in 78 countries. And this approach is literally helping people decrease their symptoms within weeks and then enable them to progress physically and cognitively to do what they want to do when they want to do it. And it's absolutely game changing. So I want you to first of all know that when it comes to recovery, you don't have to have this no pain, no gain approach. All right. In fact, I had a client many years ago who came to me and she was struggling with chronic fatigue syndrome. She was a sports type of person. She liked playing tennis, she liked surfing, she liked running. And so whenever she felt good in a moment, she would try and push herself and do all the things that she used to love to be able to do. And then after she'd do the thing, she would fall in a heap and she'd feel absolutely horrible for weeks on end. And when she came to see me, we sat down and we had a chat. And I said, okay, you know, one of the biggest things that you're going through right now is this pushing and crashing cycle. And what we need to do is create a restorative movement program that is appropriate for where your current capacity is at. And so I sat her down and I wrote this program for her, and it was very, very small for her. So this is a woman who is typically very used to pushing her body. And so we did about 3.5 minutes on the floor where she just did 3 restorative movements. That was all she had to do. And after the 3rd movement, I was obviously observing her and watching her and making sure she was doing the correct technique and just doing it at the appropriate intensity for her, which was very, very minimal. I said, okay, that's enough, you can stop there. And the lady turned around and she looked at me with this like kind of stunned face. She's like, that's it? And I was like, yeah, that's it. And then she turned to me and she goes, but Toby, I'm not even in pain. I'm not even exhausted or tired yet. And I said, that's the whole point. That's exactly why you're coming to see me, because you keep putting yourself in pain and exhaustion and fatigue and wondering why you're not getting anywhere. I said, that's exactly why you're paying me. And we both burst into laughter. And I said, how do you feel? And she said, I don't feel bad at all. I said, exactly. That's exactly what we want. And so I said, jump up and go back into my office and we'll have a chat. And so I created a program for her based off that. And what was crazy was within 6 weeks, she started to feel normal, like her normal self again. She started to feel less symptoms, less brain fog, less muscle aches and pains. Within 6 months, she was jogging again, and within a year, she was playing sport again. She was actually able to travel overseas and go surfing at a place called G-Land in Indonesia, which is quite a big, strong wave, and had a phenomenal time. Now she's fully recovered. She's been recovered for over 10 years now and doing incredible things in the world. And so it's a perfect example of, you know, the no pain, no gain, process doesn't work for people with chronic fatigue syndrome. We need to get off that red line approach and have a restorative, calming approach that actually restores energy in the brain and the body, that then enables the brain and body to adapt and then progress to new stimulus over time. And so that is just so damn important. And, you know, one of the things I want to say is, like, when you've got chronic fatigue syndrome, you're not a lazy person. And one of the hardest, I guess, wrestles that you'll have with yourself and your recovery is that you want to do everything that you can't do. And so it's normal for you to want to overcompensate, for you to want to push yourself, for you to want to, you know, do things that are probably not going to be good for you in the short term and or in the long term. And so it might feel good in the moment, but then you come crashing down. And we call this redlining, where you're pushing and crashing, you're pushing and crashing. And, you know, basically you feel good for one day and then you feel like crap for 3 days or 3 weeks. And we call that the valley of death. And we really want to avoid that, right? We want to avoid the push-crash cycle together. In fact, I've created a free training called How to Progress from Chronic Fatigue Syndrome, and it will literally teach you how to progress cognitively and physically, how to avoid pushing and crashing, how to avoid post-exertional malaise, and ultimately how to progress physically so you can go do the things you love again. If you want the copy of that free training, all you need to do is comment the word progress below, and my team will send you over the free training. You can watch it as many times as you like, and this is the process that we take all of our paying clients through. So you will find this super helpful. Comment the word progress below and we'll send that over to you. The other thing that you need to understand with chronic fatigue syndrome and movement is that there's two types of movement. There's daily functional movement where, that includes things like getting up out of bed, having a shower, going to the toilet. It could be just literally sitting in bed, sitting on the couch, standing from the couch, going to the fridge, patting the dog. All of these things are daily functional movement, and that needs to be considered particularly for people who are at the acute stage of suffering, which I'll talk about in a moment. I'm going to share with you the 3 stages of recovery, and then you'll be able to categorize yourself into what you need to do based off that stage. But it's very important that you know that daily functional movement is a form of movement, particularly if you're doing it consistently. You can create a routine and structure around your daily function so that you can then progress and build from that over time. The second form of movement is structured movement. This is where we're thinking about, gym, Pilates, yoga. It's a dedicated period of time that you are doing specifically to re-strengthen or mobilize your body so you can, get stronger and get healthier. And again, this could be walking, hiking, biking, insert any form of movement, but it's a dedicated, structured time for that. And we really only encourage this, on a bigger level in stage 2 and stage 3 of recovery, which I'll get into in a moment. But it's important to understand that both are okay? Now, one of the biggest things that you have to understand at CFS Health is that we do not teach, you pushing beyond your means. One of the things that you want to avoid the most, particularly initially, is pushing beyond your current capacity. We actually want to have a less is more approach. We want to use it's like a slingshot analogy where we pull you back a little bit, we hold you back, less is more for the first period of time, for the first 4 to 6 weeks, done consistently, and then that'll propel you forwards and enable you to do more over time. But that's very important to understand the difference between daily functional movement and structured movement. Now, here are the 3 stages of recovery. And I want you to think about which one are you in right now. They are transitional and you will transition between the 3 over time. So stage 1 is the restore stage. We call this the acute stage of suffering, where basically, you're consumed by the illness. You're extremely exhausted, you're in pain, you're in suffering almost 24/7. In this acute stage, we very rarely recommend structured movement at all. You'll be more focused on daily functional movement because that's where your capacity will be at. Just sitting out of bed can be a task. Just sitting up and moving your legs can be hard. Just getting from the bed to the couch can be difficult. But what we want over time is to create a routine and structure that you can do that enables you to expand that daily function so that you will get stronger over time. So as we use our muscles, right, it gets stronger as we rest and repair, and it grows. And then when it grows, it gets stronger, and then we do the same thing, and it just builds and builds and builds. And so, it might be hard initially to get out of bed and go sit on the couch, but if you do that regularly enough and it's appropriate for your current baseline, you will find that in 2 weeks' time, if you do it consistently, it will be way easier than it was in week 1. If you do it for 4 weeks straight, week 4 will feel like a walk in the park because you're like, oh, this is just easy now. But initially it might be very difficult. And so that's where the consistency over intensity really matters. And this is why we're huge on baseline and making sure that you build up appropriately. And this is why we have that free training called, How to Progress from Chronic Fatigue Syndrome that will literally teach you how to do this properly for you. So comment the word progress below if you want a copy of that, and we'll send it over to you as soon as we can. Stage 2 of recovery is the Restrengthen phase. And this is where we need to re-strengthen and recondition your body and brain based off where it's at. This is where we can introduce more structured movement. And when I say structured movement, it can literally just be 1 minute a day. Like, it doesn't have to be 10 minutes or 20 minutes, or it doesn't have to be a gym session. In fact, that will usually be in the later stages of stage 3. But stage 2 is where we're gonna have an intentional movement program that's going to help recondition your body for where you're at. Remember, it's about restoring energy in the body, not exerting it. And this is why restorative movement is going to be very, very helpful for you along your journey in recovery. Now, what happens here is as you get stronger and healthier, the level of capacity increases. You're able to do more without feeling any worse than you currently do. And that's the goal. Like, that's what we want for you. And so over time, as you get stronger and healthier, you'll be able to do more naturally, okay? We always recommend maintaining 2 to 4 weeks on your current regime before you progress to the next level, okay? Now, once you transition into stage 3, this is the reintegration phase of life, okay? This is where you're reintegrating to life. This is where, you know, macro movement sessions will happen, where you'll maybe start to go to yoga classes or build up your strength and stamina to get to those yoga classes, Pilates classes, bike classes, whatever it is, sports, basketball, football, dancing even, hiking. And all of this is possible because of the work that you did in stage 1, focusing on your daily functional movement, stage 2, focusing on your structured movement plan, and then opening and integrating that up and expanding your capacity over time so that then you can re-enter and reintegrate into life. And that's where the fun begins, right? Now, you might be wondering, well, Toby, how long is this going to take me from stage 1 to stage 3? Obviously, it doesn't happen overnight. You know, typically we work with our clients for 6 to 12 months as a minimum to help them go from stage 1 to stage 3. Now, this will vary from person to person, depending on the severity, depending on what they're doing day to day, depending on if life gets in the way and they've got other priorities right now. It really is dependent on the individual and their focuses and the outcomes that they want. Now, like I said before, you know, the body and the brain takes time to adapt, and it's not like you can go from 0 to hero overnight. Right, we don't want that. You already know that that doesn't work, and so we want to build this consistent approach over time. That is, we call it green lining, yeah? So you're on the green line, you're maintaining, you're progressing, you're maintaining, you're progressing, you're maintaining and progressing. And within 6 to 12 months, you can look back and go, wow, look how far I've come. You know, just like the members that we help, you can see here, people were just going from nothing to living their life again, to hiking again, to, you know, getting on their bike again, to traveling again, to dancing again, to doing all the things that they want to do again. All of this is possible over time, not overnight. Very important to understand. One of the most helpful frameworks you can understand when it comes to movement, or even just your daily capacity, is the RPE framework. This is the RPE scale, which stands for Rate of Perceived Exertion. And we use this with our members to ensure that they're sticking to the appropriate amount. So you can imagine on a scale of 1 to 10, 1 is very, very easy and doable, and 10 is maximum output. It's a 10 out of 10 effort, and you know, it's fully 100% doing it at your highest capacity. Now, obviously, if you're in stage 1 or stage 2 of recovery, the RPE scale that we want you to stick to is going to be between a 1 and a 5 out of 10. If you're in the acute stage of suffering, a 1 to a 3 is ideal, meaning that anything you do shouldn't feel harder than a 3 out of 10. And if you're in stage 2, between a 1 and a 6 is okay. And then stage 3, you are able to use the whole spectrum, you know, eventually from a 1 to a 10. Now, if you've gone from stage 2 to stage 3, you're not going to go from a 5 out of 10 effort to a 10 out of 10 maximum effort overnight. But what we see is with clients who are reintegrating to life, within 12 months or 15 months, they can push their bodies again. They can go and do a sweaty workout and feel good because their brain and bodies have adapted to the stimulus that they've been giving it for the last 12 months. And that's enabled them to have the capacity to do what they want when they want. And this is ultimately what we teach and what we help people with at CFS Health. We literally help them rebuild their brains and their bodies so that they can adapt and function appropriately to the stimulus that they give themselves. And that's how it works. It's as simple and as complex as that. Simple doesn't mean easy. So there's two things that I want you to understand when it comes to chronic fatigue syndrome and movement and exercise. One, I forgot to say this at the start, but we don't really use the word exercise at CFS Health because it has a connotation to pushing your body to the brink, and that no pain, no gain philosophy, which we know doesn't work for recovery. Now, one thing we have to talk about is fear and movement. Fear is a big thing, right? You probably, in the past, pushed yourself completely out of your comfort zone, pushed yourself beyond your capacity, and then obviously had payback for that and flare up, and your symptoms persist for 6 days, 7 days, 8 days, or even longer, and it feels horrible. So your brain then is on overprotection mode of going, okay, that can't happen again. I don't want to do that. If I do too much, I'm going to feel bad. But the problem is that can keep you stuck, right? Now, the truth is you did overdo it. You did the wrong amount at the wrong time and you got the wrong result. But our philosophy is if you do the right things at the right time, you get the right results. So if you have the right plan and the right program, you can then stick to it and you'll get the right results, right? And you don't have to have your brain overprotecting itself when it's unnecessary to do so. Now, one thing you want to do to check in is ask yourself this question. Is what I'm about to do appropriate for where I'm at? Now, if it's a strong no, like you're going to go from a walk to a run within weeks or months, probably not smart, right? If you're going to, I always say to clients, are you going to run a marathon tomorrow? They're like, oh, Toby, I don't know if I should do a 2-minute walk. And I'll say to them, well, are you going to run a marathon or is it just a 2-minute walk and that's appropriate for you? Because they're letting fear dictate their decisions. But when they realize, oh no, that is appropriate for where I'm at, then that's okay and they can calm their system down. And so just ask yourself, is this appropriate for where I'm at right now? And if it's a no, that's okay. You say no and you stick to what's appropriate. But oftentimes it's actually fear that's dictating the decision. You never want to let fear dictate your decision. I'll tell you a story about a client that I worked with who had a lot of fear around movement. And so when we started working together, I said to her, okay, what feels like the type of movement that you want to do? What's the movement modality? She said, I've got a stationary bike and I want to rebuild my strength in my legs. And I said, okay, we can start there. And I said, what would you like to start with? 30 seconds, 20 seconds, 1 minute, 2 minutes? And she said, 2 seconds. And I said, okay. She actually said 1 second. And I said, well 1 second's only going to get one leg of the pedal. And so we need 2 seconds to do 1 and 2 to even it out. And so I said, we'll just do 2 seconds then. And you could see she was so scared. She's like, oh my God, I don't even know if I can do this. And she was shitting herself. And so I worked with her comfort levels. Rather than me pushing her and saying, no, you need to do 1 minute, that would have backfired. So I said, let's start with 2 seconds. Do that every day for a week and then come back to me. She did it. Of course, it was appropriate for her because you could barely do any less than that. And so then we upped it by 4 seconds. So she was doing 4 seconds instead of 2 seconds. Then she upped it again after a few weeks. And what was starting to happen was this calming of the nervous system and the realization that what she was doing was actually safe. Now, it didn't happen overnight. She was still a little bit scared, but the fear started to dissipate over time. She went from 2 minutes, 3 minutes, 4 minutes, all the way to 10 minutes, and then eventually built to 15 minutes. And what was crazy is once she hit the 20-minute mark on the bike, it was like she was a different person. And I said to this client from Canada, I said, you have just stepped out of the cage of fear. She was smiling, she was bubbly, she's got energy. And it's because over time, as she built the confidence in her body and the capacity in her body, the belief started to come. I am getting better, I am getting better. And she'd look in the mirror and go, wow, look at me, like my legs are getting stronger, I can do more. She ended up recovering and ended up buying a boat with her husband and sailing for a year on the water. And incredible story, but that was just a perfect story of stepping out of the cage of fear appropriately for where she was at. And so you can do the same thing, making sure you're not letting fear dictate your decision, but more so you're making the appropriate decision based off where you're at right now. The second thing I want you to remember is that energy can create energy, provided you're doing the right amount for you. So when I shared that initial story with that client who, was constantly pushing and crashing, when we finally did the appropriate amount for her and we stopped before she got to the point of pain or exhaustion, she actually felt better. There was energy in her system that she could still use. She wasn't depleting all her energy credits. And so that's a really important key philosophy to remember, is that energy can create energy when we do the right things at the right time. And then later on, as you're in stage 3 of recovery, you can push yourself and actually get more energy from it and not be depleted and exhausted from it. And that's something to keep in mind as you're on the recovery journey. And so obviously you can see here that it is very nuanced, right? Inside of our recovery program, we have a 12-level movement mastery program where it covers all 3 stages. There are 4 levels in each stage. 1 to 4 is for the restore acute stage. 5 to 8 is for the Restrengthen phase. And then 8 to 12 is for the reintegration phase. This is designed by a physiologist, exercise physiologist who has been through chronic fatigue syndrome herself and recovered through our program. And then we've designed it together to ensure that there is a process and an actual formula that people can stick to based off where they're at in the stages of their recovery. And remember, this isn't an overnight cure. This is literally a step-by-step plan to recondition your brain and body over time so you can get healthy and start living again. I want you to remember that recovery is a rehabilitation process. When you understand that, you can start to apply these concepts. If you keep believing that you need to take a pill or that someone needs to fix you overnight, you are gonna keep going around in circles and circles and circles and circles until you understand that recovery is a rehabilitation process of the brain and the body so you can get healthy and start living again. Now, like I said before, if you want a more in-depth training on how to progress from chronic fatigue syndrome, comment the word progress below and we'll send over the training now. And if you love this video, feel free to comment below your biggest insight, your biggest takeaway, so you can share and declare that and maybe help someone else today. Big love, and we'll see you soon. I hope you found this video helpful. If you're looking for more specific content around recovery, feel free to explore our entire YouTube channel. There is literally over 1,000 trainings specifically in different areas of recovery. If you're looking for deeper help, I've just created a free training on how to progress from chronic fatigue syndrome. All you need to do is comment the word progress below on this video and my team will send you over the training for free. And lastly, if you're looking for more in-depth training and more in-depth help practically with your recovery from myself and my entire recovery team, all you need to do is click in the link in the description to book in your one-on-one recovery plan call where you can discuss the different recovery options for you so we can help you go from where you're at to where you want to be over the next 6 to 12 months with our one-on-one mentorship recovery program. All the best for now, and we'll see you in the next video.